Is gatekeeping good for gaming? I say yes in some situations. Now hear me out before you click off this video or go rushing to the comments to scream at me. I want y'all to hear my case because I think some games don't need gatekeeping. It's all about how the franchise established themselves. For example, Palworld is a game that has loads of accessibility in its difficulty tuning, so no one expects Palworld to be locked in with its playstyle one way or the other. Everyone plays how they want, and that's it. This is fine because it was by design from the jump. But where it gets questionable for me is with a more established franchise that was designed one way and then starts to shift somewhere down the line. I look at Halo as a perfect example of what could go wrong when you begin to make your title a place for quote-unquote everyone. I love the saying, something made for everyone is something made for no one. And I think that fits extremely well here, because when you try to branch out and do everything, it feels directionless, aimless, and it conveys to nobody. You need direction when you make something. Halo used to be known as a top-tier first-person shooter that stood up to Call of Duty while only being on one platform, which was impressive in and of itself. It was the defining franchise for Xbox, and everyone knew it was an arena shooter. Halo Reach was the beginning of the change with loadouts. Don't get me wrong, it was mostly still an arena shooter, but it was certainly the tipping point into what would become of Halo 4 and then Halo 5. Halo classics like 1, 2, and 3 were more strictly arena shooters with abilities, all spawns on the map for you to pick up, whereas Halo Reach was the start of armor abilities, which were part of loadouts. And you could start with invisibility or sprint, which replaced the invisibility and faster movement pickups on the map. Before Halo Reach, Halo never had loadouts. It never had sprint, never had any of that. And before people, go down and start talking about Halo Wars and stuff, that's totally different. They're totally different genres. It's a game just attempting a totally different genre, but it's also a spin-off not attempting to completely reform the franchise at its core. It still has its mainline games. So the issue with an established franchise like Halo that had its own identity as an arena shooter becoming more Call of Duty-ish is it begins to draw in people who were never a real fan of what Halo established itself as. This sounds good because you're drawing in new people, but it disrupts your core fan base and starts to cost you some of that guaranteed cash you would have had from them. Eventually, if you continue to branch off, it turns into more and more new quote-unquote fans, while your core fans have been mostly shaken off, and then you have separate pools of people that want/expect different things, and your franchise begins to feel inconsistent and directionless. Again, Halo was an arena shooter. It was all about going around the map finding things. You started with your basic assault rifle and a pistol, and then you had to find all the unique things like a rocket launcher, a shotgun, a sword, things like that you had to go around and pick up on the map. You were never supposed to be able to have some of these things like a battle rifle to start with, unless it was of course that playlist, but that was what Halo was. It was always about choosing the playlist and having abundance of different playlists for a variety of different ways to play the game. Never was it meant to have loadouts and sprint right out the gate and all this stuff. It was never meant to have all of that. And so what happens when you get this branching of all these different games is now you have fans of Halo 4, fans of Halo 5, fans of the original Halos, and they're all wanting different things. And you try as a dev studio to pick, how do you pick which route to go? Who's gonna get us the most cash flow? And what happens is they tend to try to just say, let's try to make a game for each of these categories. And it's, again, a game for quote unquote everyone, which is a game for no one, because everyone dislikes a portion of what's going on here, or all of it when it's combined together or something. It just feels directionless. And speaking of directionless and inconsistent, let's move on to one of my favorite franchises, Borderlands. When it comes to split fanbase, I think Borderlands is the definition of this. Just look at my Borderlands 3 versus Borderlands 2 videos comment section. Borderlands 3 is divisive to the Borderlands community in many ways. It got rid of the need to play the game more than once to get to the end game. Its story and villains alone shook off a good portion of the fanbase. Borderlands Endgame has never quite been the same twice, and that's a problem for a franchise that is supposed to be known for its endgame loop. This again results in a split in the fanbase and makes it difficult for any studio to decide which way to go, because either way, on the surface, it feels like you lose some fans. Now with Borderlands specifically, I'm not so sure there was a separate pool of people between Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3 asking for the changes and things that happened. I think Borderlands 3 created the split, which now going into Borderlands 4, we're facing these issues. I think right now Borderlands is facing all of these issues, and now we're at a point where Gearbox needs to decide which way to go. And Borderlands 3 brought about this noise in the community about story and villains and all these things, and it sounds like Gearbox is going to be going this route, taking the story more seriously and incorporating your character more into the story. And I'm not 100% sure this is, as somebody that has been playing Borderlands since Borderlands 1, I'm not necessarily sure this is what I want. I have to wait and see when the game comes out. But when it comes to Borderlands, as interesting as I think the world is and some of the background lore is, I've always thought gameplay first, story second. It almost sounds like Borderlands 4 is going the way of story first, which I'm not so sure I'm a big fan of, but we'll find out as time goes on. And this is just, in my opinion, as somebody that's deep in the cut with Borderlands and loves the community and yada yada, this is a great example that I know is going on right now of a split fan base and how this can happen when you make games that branch off from each other and have different things going on. It creates two different fan base. Now, these two past examples are ones that have had identity struggles for quite some time, but an example of what happens when you stick to your guns despite a loud cry on the internet is Elden Ring. Maybe some of you remember there was a pretty loud outcry against not being able to pause the game, and anyone that has played Souls games knows this is just how it is. FromSoft stuck to their guns and did not change this. This is a studio well aware of its core fan base and what they want their games to be. FromSoft never catered to the noise because they've had plenty of games before, and this was never an issue quite like it was with Elden Ring. And that's because it's a game that blew up and had tons of new players joining the Souls experience. People who would never touch a Souls game because of its difficulty came around and had to play Elden Ring because of the zeitgeist around it. A game that blew up and stayed extremely popular despite not catering to the masses with certain requests, like being able to pause the game. This isn't to say they haven't done great things and great updates to the game, it's just to say that they didn't cater to what they know isn't their real, or I wouldn't say real fan base, but they know what their games are at their core values and they're going to stick to those. So they didn't give in with that, but they updated their games and did good things and evolved it in the right way according to their core values for their franchise. Next up, I also looked at the potential danger Doom: The Dark Ages could find itself in with its difficulty tuning. This is a game that has always had difficulties to select from, but the level of tuning you can do in Doom: The Dark Ages while looking really cool and interesting is a bit of a worry for me as well. Don't get me wrong, the game looks freaking badass, and I'm not sitting here doom and gloom on Doom: The Dark Ages. But when they say a game for all Slayers and keep mentioning people new to the franchise can comfortably join in on this title, it starts to make me wonder why and what they did differently to make this an easier transition for newcomers. When I see they went away from difficulties to select and you can now tune your experience, it makes me wonder if there is a lack of confidence. I'm not saying this game will be bad or that I hate what I saw. I'm just being skeptical about some of what I saw. To summarize, I think quote-unquote gatekeeping is something that really is what most fans of an established franchise would want, and that is to keep their core values, but to keep on evolving those in a way that is healthy for said franchise. I'm a huge Borderlands fan. Of course I want more and more people to play Borderlands. I want more and more people to enjoy what I enjoy and play with people that enjoy playing Borderlands. I love Borderlands and I want it to grow so that I can keep getting more of them. But they're in a really dangerous spot right now where they just had a ton of bad things. They had Wonderlands, they had Tales from the new Tales from the Borderlands, whatever the hell it's called, and they had the movie, which cratered their reputation. And if you look up Borderlands online, the movie shows up before anything else, which is insane to me. Gearbox, get on that, fix that. But my point is, they need to stick with what Borderlands fans love. Word of mouth works. I preach about games to my friends all the time, and I preached about Dead Island 2 to my friends, because if y'all don't know, I love that game. I have a video about it, you can go check it out. I glazed the hell out of that game because I truly do just love that game and what it is and what it did. It's such a simple game, but yet so great to me. And it got my friends to buy it. And they love the game, and so word of mouth works. So if you get your core fans, if you keep them and make them happy and keep evolving upon that, you're going to get more and more players. Look at FromSoft with Elden Ring. Look at Baldur's Gate 3. That is not a game that catered to the masses. That is a game made by artists and devs that truly were inspired and loved what the idea was and just went balls to the walls with it. I know it's probably cherry picking to pick those, but it's just what happens when you make great games because you love what you're doing and you believe in it. I mean, look at Sony over this past year with all their live service games. They either flopped or canceled or whatever, and it's like, most people that play on PlayStation didn't even want live service games. They want what they make that are good and they know was good. And that's not what most people would consider quote unquote gatekeeping. And that's what I'm saying is, like, people in the community, they just want what they know is good and what they have been getting that has been great. They don't want it to change because things like this happen where Sony just made a bunch of flops and cancels and all sorts of terrible things. So yeah, I'm not advocating for keeping people out. I just think if you dislike the game and what it's doing at its core, you probably shouldn't be trying to advocate for the whole franchise to cater to you. There are plenty of games out there, and I'm sure at least one of those games is doing what you're asking. It exists out there somewhere. It's already there. You just gotta find it. Anyways, y'all, I am your Statistax. I appreciate you for sticking around to this point. If you did, definitely let me know what you think of this topic down below. Gatekeeping for gaming. Is it necessary? Is it good? Is it healthy? Let me know what you think down below. And I really appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.